Welcome back to Global Eye. Today we're covering the untold story of one of Hollywood's most iconic and intensely private actors. Tommy Lee Jones, now 79 years old, has built a legendary career playing tough, no-nonsense characters who never show weakness. But behind that stoic facade lies a decades-long battle with serious health conditions that he's kept largely hidden from the public. From a type 2 diabetes diagnosis in 1999 to a prostate cancer diagnosis in 2014, Jones has been quietly fighting battles that would break most men, all while continuing to deliver powerhouse performances that defined a generation. But there's more to this story than medical diagnoses. In recent years, fans have noticed something alarming. Jones appears increasingly frail in public appearances. There are reports of memory issues and confusion during interviews. Friends have raised concerns about his frail appearance, and perhaps most telling, the man who once dominated Hollywood has slowed his work to a crawl. With only a handful of projects in recent years, the question everyone's asking is, what's really happening to Tommy Lee Jones? If you're new here, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this is a story about a man who spent his entire life refusing to show vulnerability. Now facing battles he can't act his way through. Let's dive into the hidden health struggles of Tommy Lee Jones. To understand why Tommy Lee Jones' health battles are so significant, you need to understand the man himself. Born September 15, 1946, in San Saba, Texas, Jones is the embodiment of rugged American masculinity. His father was an oil field worker and rancher. His mother was a police officer, teacher, and beauty shop owner. Jones grew up in the harsh Texas landscape, learning early that weakness wasn't tolerated and emotions were something you kept to yourself. That upbringing shaped everything about the man he would become. Jones was more than just tough. He was brilliant. He attended Harvard University on a football scholarship, where he roomed with Al Gore and graduated cum laude in English. His intelligence combined with his physical presence made him a unique force in Hollywood. He didn't play action heroes or romantics. He played men who had been hardened by life, who carried their pain internally, who would rather die than admit vulnerability. Characters like U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard in The Fugitive, Agent K in Men in Black, Sheriff Ed Tom Bell in No Country for Old Men, and Gary Gilmore in The Executioner's Song became iconic, precisely because Jones brought that authentic toughness to every role. But playing these characters for decades created an image that became impossible to escape. Tommy Lee Jones wasn't just an actor playing tough guys. He was perceived as being that person. Interviews with Jones over the years reveal a man who is notoriously difficult, short-tempered, unwilling to engage in the typical Hollywood promotional game. He's famous for giving terse, sometimes hostile responses to journalists. He's known for his intensity on set and his refusal to tolerate what he perceives as weakness or incompetence. This persona made him respected and feared, but it also meant that when he began facing serious health challenges, he couldn't ask for help or show vulnerability without it, seeming like a fundamental betrayal of who he was supposed to be. The irony is devastating. Jones spent his entire career playing men who suppressed their pain and soldier on, regardless of the cost. And when real pain came into his life, when genuine health crises emerged that required vulnerability and openness, he responded exactly like the characters he played. He stayed silent. He kept working. He refused to show weakness. And that decision has had profound consequences. In 1999, Tommy Lee Jones was 53 years old, and at the peak of his career, he'd won an Oscar for The Fugitive, starred in massive blockbusters like Men in Black and Batman Forever, and was one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. That's when doctors told him he had type 2 diabetes, a chronic disease that affects the body's ability to produce or use insulin properly. For most people, a diabetes diagnosis is a wake-up call that requires immediate lifestyle changes. For Tommy Lee Jones, it was apparently just another inconvenience to be managed, quietly without disrupting his work. Type 2 diabetes isn't just about blood sugar levels. Left unmanaged, it can lead to heart disease, stroke, kidney disease, nerve damage, vision problems, and dramatically shortened lifespan. The condition requires constant vigilance, regular monitoring, dietary restrictions, often medication, and sometimes insulin injections. It means you can't just power through when you're feeling off. You have to listen to your body and respond to what it needs. For a man like Tommy Lee Jones, who built his entire identity on toughness and self-reliance, this diagnosis represented a fundamental challenge to his worldview. To Jones' credit, he didn't completely ignore the diagnosis. He has been open about having diabetes and has used his platform to raise awareness about the condition. He's encouraged others to get regular checkups and not ignore warning signs. He's spoken about the importance of early detection and proper management, but being a spokesperson for diabetes awareness is very different from actually managing the disease effectively in your own life. And there are indications that Jones' management of his diabetes may not have been as rigorous as it should have been, particularly in the early years after diagnosis. The challenge with type 2 diabetes is that it's largely invisible to others. You can have dangerously high blood sugar levels and appear completely normal. You can be doing serious damage to your organs and blood vessels while continuing to work 16-hour days on film sets. The disease progresses slowly, silently, doing damage that accumulates over years and decades before the consequences become unavoidable. For someone like Jones, who was determined to maintain his image and his work ethic regardless of his health, diabetes was an enemy that could be ignored in the short term. Even though that ignore came with a terrible long-term price. 15 years after his diabetes diagnosis, in 2014, Tommy Lee Jones faced an even more serious health crisis. At age 68, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, the most common cancer among men in the United States. Prostate cancer occurs when cells in the prostate gland begin to grow uncontrollably, and while it's often slow-growing and treatable, if caught early, it can be deadly if it spreads beyond the prostate. For Jones, this diagnosis represented a threat that even his legendary toughness couldn't defeat through sheer willpower. Prostate cancer treatment options vary depending on the stage and aggressiveness of the cancer, but they all come with significant side effects and challenges. Surgery to remove the prostate can cause incontinence and erectile dysfunction. Radiation therapy can cause fatigue, urinary problems, and bowel issues. Hormone therapy can cause hot flashes, loss of bone density, weight gain, and depression. Chemotherapy, if needed for advanced cancer, brings its own brutal side effects. For an aging actor whose career depends on physical presence and the ability to work long hours, these treatments represented a direct threat to his livelihood. Jones has been even more private about his prostate cancer than his diabetes, rarely discussing it publicly and never providing details about his treatment or current status. What we know is limited to what he's chosen to share or what can be inferred from public records and credible reporting. But the fact that he's continued working in the years since the diagnosis suggests either that the cancer was caught early and treated successfully, or that Jones is continuing to work despite ongoing treatment and its side effects. Given what we know about his personality and his approach to health challenges, the latter seems entirely possible. The combination of diabetes and prostate cancer creates a particularly challenging health situation. Diabetes can complicate cancer treatment and recovery. It can slow healing after surgery. It can make patients more vulnerable to infections during chemotherapy. It requires constant monitoring and management, even while dealing with the physical and emotional toll of cancer treatment. For Jones, managing both conditions simultaneously while maintaining his career would have required a level of self-care and vulnerability that seems fundamentally at odds with his personality and public image. In recent years, something has changed. Fans who've followed Tommy Lee Jones' career for decades have noticed that he looks different, acts different, and has dramatically reduced his public presence. In 2024, multiple outlets reported that friends were raising concerns about Jones' frail appearance at public events. Photos from recent appearances show a man who looks significantly older and more worn than his chronological age would suggest. The rugged, imposing physical presence that defined his career has diminished, replaced by someone who appears fragile and tired. But it's not just physical appearance. There have been troubling reports about Jones' mental acuity in recent years. During interviews and public appearances, Jones has at times appeared confused or struggled to recall details. A particularly concerning incident occurred when he seemed unable to remember meeting someone he'd previously worked with, leading to speculation about possible cognitive decline or memory issues. Fans on social media have expressed sadness at seeing one of their heroes appearing diminished, with some comparing the situation to watching another legend gradually biting the dust. Jones' work schedule tells its own story. After decades of appearing in multiple films per year, Jones slowed dramatically in the 2020s. He starred in 2 films in 2023, The Burial and Finiskind, with just 1 documentary scheduled for 2024. For a man who once worked constantly, this reduced schedule suggests either a deliberate decision to step back or an inability to maintain his previous pace. Friends and colleagues have noted that Jones has been slowing down on work recently, with one source noting that time comes for all of us, even Tommy Lee Jones. There have also been reports of minor health issues that Jones has been managing in addition to his diabetes and prostate cancer. Sources close to the actor have mentioned arthritis, which would be consistent with his age and the physical demands of his career. There have been whispers about a minor heart condition, though details are scarce and unconfirmed. What's clear is that Jones, now 79 years old, is dealing with the cumulative effects of aging, chronic disease, and decades of pushing his body to its limits without adequate rest or self-care. The most heartbreaking aspect of watching Jones decline is seeing how it contradicts everything his career stood for. He played characters who were invincible, who overcame impossible odds through toughness and determination. But real life doesn't work that way. Real bodies break down. Real diseases progress regardless of how strong your will is. And real aging happens to everyone, even Hollywood legends who seemed larger than life. Perhaps the greatest tragedy in Tommy Lee Jones' health journey isn't the diagnoses themselves, but the silence surrounding them. Jones has rarely spoken about his health struggles in detail. He hasn't been open about his treatment protocols, his challenges in managing his conditions, or how his health has affected his work and personal life. This silence is consistent with his personality and his generation's approach to illness. But it also means he's fought these battles largely alone. Without the support system that openness might have provided, there's a broader issue here about masculinity, particularly among men of Jones' generation. Men born in the 1940s were raised with the belief that showing weakness was shameful, that asking for help was admitting defeat, that real men suffered in silence rather than burdening others with their problems. This mindset has been linked to worse health outcomes for men who are statistically less likely than women to seek medical care, follow treatment protocols, or ask for help when they're struggling. Jones embodies this toxic aspect of traditional masculinity, and he's paying the price for it now. The silence also affects Jones' legacy and his ability to help others. When celebrities are open about their health struggles, it raises awareness, reduces stigma, and encourages others to seek treatment. Jones has done some of this with his diabetes advocacy, but he hasn't been as forthcoming about his prostate cancer or his recent decline. This represents a missed opportunity to use his platform for good and to help other men understand that seeking help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. There's also the personal cost. Jones has been married to his 3rd wife, Dawn Laurel Jones, since 2001, and the couple appears to have a strong relationship. But managing serious health conditions puts enormous strain on any marriage. And doing so while maintaining a public facade of strength and control must create additional pressure. Jones has kept his personal life intensely private. So we don't know how his health has affected his marriage, but it's impossible to imagine that it hasn't taken a toll. Friends and colleagues have expressed frustration at Jones' refusal to slow down or take his health seriously. There are reports of people close to him begging him to work less, to focus on his health, to accept that, at 79 years old with multiple serious health conditions, he doesn't need to prove anything anymore. But Jones, true to character, has reportedly dismissed these concerns and insisted on continuing to work as long as he's able. At 79 years, old with multiple serious health conditions, Tommy Lee Jones is facing the inevitable question that all aging legends must confront. What comes next? How many more films does he have in him? How will he be remembered? And what does he want his final chapter to look like? These are questions Jones has characteristically refused to answer publicly, maintaining his privacy and his focus on work rather than reflection or legacy planning. Jones' recent work suggests an actor coming to terms with mortality and aging. His performance in The Burial, released in 2023, was widely praised as a reminder of his talent and screen presence. But it also showcased an older, slower, more weathered version of the actor. He can no longer do the physical roles that defined his career. He can't work the grueling schedules he once maintained. But what he can still do is bring depth, gravitas, and authenticity to roles that require life experience and hard-won wisdom. The question is whether Jones will get the opportunity to craft a proper farewell to his career. Whether health will make that decision for him. Many great actors have been able to choose their final roles carefully, to go out on their own terms with performances that summarize their careers and provide closure for themselves and their fans. Others have their careers ended abruptly by health crises or death, leaving work unfinished and questions unanswered. Given Jones' health situation and his refusal to slow down, there's genuine concern that he may fall into the latter category. There's also the question of how Jones will be remembered. Will he be celebrated as one of the great character actors of his generation, someone who brought authenticity and intensity to every role? Or will the narrative of his career be overshadowed by the sadness of his physical decline and the tragedy of a man who couldn't show vulnerability even when it might have saved him? The answer may depend on what happens in these final years and whether Jones can find a way to be honest about his struggles while he still has time. The tragedy of Tommy Lee Jones isn't just his personal story. It's what his story represents about American masculinity, about the cost of the tough guy persona, and about what happens when we build identities around never showing weakness. Jones played characters who embodied this philosophy for decades, and in doing so, he reinforced cultural messages about manhood that are ultimately destructive. Real strength isn't refusing to acknowledge pain. Real courage isn't suffering in silence. Real toughness is having the vulnerability to ask for help when you need it. If there's hope in this story, it's that Jones is still here, still working, still fighting. He's managed his diabetes for 26 years now. He survived his prostate cancer diagnosis and has continued working for over a decade since then. He's shown the same resilience that defined his characters, even if the cost of that resilience has been higher than it needed to be. And perhaps in these final years, there's still time for Jones to show a different kind of strength. The strength to be honest about his struggles and to use his platform to help other men understand that taking care of your health isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The other lesson is about aging and mortality. We're all getting older. We're all going to face health challenges. We're all going to experience decline. The question isn't whether these things will happen, but how we'll respond when they do. Will we fight them with denial and silence like Tommy Lee Jones? Or will we face them with honesty, seek help when we need it, and focus on quality of life rather than maintaining an image? Jones' story is a cautionary tale, but it doesn't have to be the only way as fans. We can honor Tommy Lee Jones by appreciating his incredible body of work while also learning from his mistakes. We can celebrate his talent without glorifying the toxic masculinity he sometimes represented. We can hope that in whatever time he has left, he finds peace, receives the care he needs, and perhaps even finds the courage to be vulnerable about his journey. Because if Tommy Lee Jones, the toughest guy in Hollywood, can admit that health matters and asking for help is okay, maybe other men will feel empowered to do the same. At 79, Tommy Lee Jones stands as both a legend and a cautionary tale. His incredible career brought us some of cinema's most memorable performances, but his approach to his health may have cost him years of quality life and created unnecessary suffering. The combination of type 2 diabetes diagnosed in 1999 and prostate cancer, along with recent concerns about his frail appearance and possible cognitive decline, paints a picture of a man facing battles that even his legendary toughness can't win through sheer determination. The tragedy isn't just that Jones is dealing with serious health conditions. It's that his silence about those conditions, his refusal to show vulnerability, and his determination to maintain his tough guy image may have prevented him from getting the support and care he needed. It's a pattern we see too often, particularly among men of his generation, and it's one that needs to change. What's your perspective on Tommy Lee Jones' health journey? Should celebrities be more open about their health struggles? And what can we learn from Jones' story about the cost of toxic masculinity and the importance of vulnerability? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth looks at the untold stories behind Hollywood's biggest legends. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and remember, real strength includes taking care of yourself and asking for help when you need it.